Open with this Ryder here to review the Kamen Kabuto DX Hyper Zecter. So following up with the previous Bandai China releases of the Kabuto and Gatack Zecters and the Faiz and Kaiksa drivers, in the latter half of the year, basically in September, they put out the associating power-up items for those riders. So obviously for Kabuto's line, we have the Hyper Zecter, and for Faiz, we have the Faiz XL brace. Obviously in the case of here, we're covering the Hyper Zecter, which obviously we have the Zecter right there, Hyper Kabuto, and Hyper Clockup. We still have the box being consistent with the previous two releases to the point that this is still in the same numerical order of 03. Again, we have the Hyper Zecter up there. We have Kabuto prominently on this right side, the contents of the box. And then the left is where we get basically our transition and such. Because while up here we do have content just showing you how to use it as Hyper Kabuto and showing both just Hyper Form and Hyper Clockup mode. Down here we actually do have a blur talking about the inclusion of Hyper Gatack, to which when we turn it back, we have Hyper Gatack present on the back, obviously featured from the Kabuto Hyper Battle video. I'll actually make sure to credit that too in the description. But yeah, it's really a really nice box overall. And the bottom, again, just has the cautions and warnings and such, and tells you that it requires 2 AAA batteries. So we'll open it up. So here we have the contents out of the box. Obviously we have the Hyper Zecter itself, and we're going to take a look at... No, we're not. But, I think this is still a Clockup pad. Taking a look at the Hyper Zecter itself, it's really it's a really interesting device. Obviously, it's still in the scheme of how the Zecters are, of just being based off of existing insects. I think this is still a Kabuto beetle. Or, yeah, I assume it's still a Kabuto beetle, because obviously this is... Or a Hercules? No, it's not a Hercules beetle. There's already Kentaros. So, Ktaros, I think is his name. But it's still a beetle because it's horn and such. But that's why I was saying I think this is still potentially a Kabuto beetle because of this and such, which is obviously the handle for the Hyper cast off and such. Which again, the spring is really nice. It's nice and strong. It doesn't feel like it's gonna like ruin itself. And again, just the paint on this is really phenomenal. Like, obviously it's mostly the silver base, and with this nice gunmetal gray on the sides with the red trims, and obviously the bottom just being black plastic and such. We have the boosters at the back. We have the Hyper Clockup button, which is really clicky. We have Zect, and this is actually where the speaker grills are at. So the speaker is literally underneath this button. And we have the green here for the eyes, but also for the LEDs. This side has the screws. And again, we have this nice, like, grill. Yeah, is it grill? Details on the side. And then we have the nice rich red, or it's not even red, it's like an interesting like metallic orange. It's I really do like how it's all around and such. And then again we have the gunmetal gray, or just a metal color on the horn and such. Now to say this, like, just say this right away, this is the CSM mold, but basically reverted back to the DX color scheme. So obviously die-cast metal is excluded and such. And you can tell this is the CSM mode due to this entire portion of the Hyper Zecter. Because, oh, I forgot to mention this too. Obviously, we have the Kabuto Zect right there. I think it is actually painted on as opposed to being a sticker. It's on both sides. Again, it's a really nice detail that's present. Well, like I said before, you can tell this is the CSM version because of this portion, because the original version had a more truncated horn and such. But other than that, I think the copyrights are like down here, because this is obviously where you insert it in the clock-up pad with this button, and the battery compartment is under here. I will just show it just to prove the copyright, because it definitely is an interesting battery compartment. Where's the copyright? The copyright, I think, is on the side. Unless this thing doesn't have a copyright. Because... just put it down here. My apologies. But... because I think the thing too is that obviously, if you recall, because of how heavy the horn was for the CSM one, they had to include an additional stand for this portion, but obviously because it's no longer there, it just sits. I could have sworn the copyright was somewhere, unless... oh no, I'm dumb. It's because it's literally on this thing, the clock-up pad. Again, I think it's still considered the clock-up pad because it does have the details of one. It's just a lot more thinner and actually has like detail inside. But yeah, again, it's a really interesting piece. It's actually, yeah, because this is the only copyright information there is, but there's no like new copyrights on it. But yeah, again, it's really interesting with how this clock-up pad is done and such. That is just a loose piece of plastic, and as you can see from here, you just simply hook it onto the side of the belt. You don't have to slide it through like the original clock-up pads. I don't have one out right now, but we will do a comparison. Then obviously we can just simply match this up. So obviously you just have to have these two ends and then the button like so. As you can see, the arrow down here, you simply insert it like so and then slide it upwards like that until you hear a click, and now you have your Hyper Zecter on your clock-up pad, which again, it's really on there really nicely and such. You can press it in, you can swing that down and such. It's just a really nice, it just looks really nice altogether. And to remove it, just press this down, swing it down, like so. So we will go through the sounds for the most parts. We won't go through all of them. On and off switch is here. And to note, the on and off switch is like really tight. You really have to like push your nail through it and such. But I'll have it like this because of the LEDs. So there's the Hyper Zecter appearing from the time stream and such. And obviously we can do one or two things first. However, I'm going to do this first because technically this is how Caucasus uses the Hyper Zecter. And for this portion, basically for Caucasus usage of the Hyper Zecter, we will present the eyes so then you can see LEDs. So we will press this first. So as you can see, by pressing this, we activate Hyper Clock Up to which we have both sides of the eyes going back and forth, and then a new rendition of the clock up. And then now we have a more fast pace. You have like a end phase of the hyper clock up, to which you can just keep pressing this. Again, I'm pressing it on the corners so then I don't end up blocking the speaker. You can press it early too to end it, but by doing that, you can also restart it. But basically, by pressing this constantly, it's gonna start up hyper clock up. It's not parallel. So it does, basically, to get the hyper clock over, you have to start the clock up, or hyper clock up. And then when you press it after, it can restart. And then, if we were to swing this down technically, again, I'll have it with the LEDs. You get the maximum Ryder power, to which for any Ryder wearing this, they will do their finisher and then allow clock up to go through. But when you do the maximum Ryder power, it only does this first phase of the hyper clock up. So you won't get that last 10 seconds or 5 seconds. I'm sorry for talking over this. But with that, that's also another identifier that the sounds of this version are just ripped straight from the CSM version. It's not, because the DX version did not do that. Because the DX version, whenever you did the maximum Ryder power, and then you can press it again. The original DX version just stopped. You did not get the standby continuing and such. But now, we will do the first mode of the Hyper Zecter now, because we basically just did it without transforming. So again, just slide it on like so, and Hyper Cast Off. So now we technically are Hyper Kabuto, or Kabuto Hyper form. I will do that again. To which at this point, it's the same properties of the Hyper Clock Up. I'll probably show that you can do maximum Ryder power at that end point, because technically the maximum Ryder power is an entire different sound set, technically. And you can keep doing maximum Ryder power, but you can't do that. You can't interrupt it. But you can also hold it in. Whoops. Yeah, but you can't. I was going to say, you cannot interrupt this by pressing this, so you have to let it up. However, that is basically it for the Hyper Zecter, so let's actually get to the second mode of it now. So to actually show this off with a belt, obviously to get for both the Kabuto Zecter and the Gatack Zecter, you need to remove the left clock up pad, to which we will compare these right now. And the funniest thing is that they're actually different colors of plastic. I feel like I don't know, because I think potentially the Kabuto Zecter's belt straps might be darker than the Gatack Zecter's, but yeah, this is like a dark gray as opposed to the light gray and such, but you can just tell how much thinner this clock up pad is compared to like the actual clock up pad and such. But again, you just want to take this one off. You don't like, it's just to be more accurate as opposed to just, you know, basically having 3 of them exist on the belt, because that's just not how it is supposed to be. And then just simply slide it in like so. This has been on, so we're already technically transformed as Gatack. And now, technically what we're going to do to switch to Hyper Gatack mode is like what you have to do with the CSM version. You have to hold the horn down until you hear the announcement. To which you can still hold it down for as long as you want, but, you know, let go when you want to. So it's going to get into that no matter what. It doesn't stop, but obviously we will show off the proper transformation from the Hyper Battle video. So now we can proclaim Hyper Cast Off. So now we are Gatack Hyper Stag Beetle. And again, like what I said before, because this is ripped from the CSM version, that means this has the CSM version and technically, I guess, the present version of the Hyper Stag Beetle announcement, because I just saw Gamba Rising had the same announcement. So, if you don't recall, the Hyper Gatack announcement has 3 versions. The first one coming from the Hyper Battle video itself, the second one coming from the PlayStation 2 game, and the third one, which I'll dub as the CSM version. The CSM version has this weird, like, amalgamation of the voices basically, because it's like it transitioned from like the traditional like Kabuto like deep voice, but then it does get into like the high pitched voice. The PS2 version has the entire thing in Gatack, like the Gatack Zecter's voice, so it's like super high pitched. And I think the CSM version is trying to recreate what the Hyper Battle videos was, which admittedly that one I think is kind of the most washed out one, just because Order of the Speed was playing over it. But because I think the Stag Beetle sound, it is carried over from this for the CSM version. But like, I think the original Hyper Battle version of the announcement is similar to the CSM version, but the hyper part is not as deep. But anyways, obviously, again, Hyper Gatack has the same properties, so if we press this in, we access Hyper Clock Up. And obviously, to replicate the finisher, we need to do maximum Ryder power and do the Ryder hyper kick like so. To which I just saw from the Hyper Battle video. The Hyper Battle video technically did have that last phase playing through, the last final bits of that battle, but you know, you can't do that for now. But yeah, that is basically it for this, but we will show the Hyper Zecter off on a belt, because really, obviously, we've only seen 3 riders use the Hyper Zecter. Kabuto was the second, Gatack was the third, and Caucasus was the first. So there we have that. Obviously, if they ever release the Hyper Zecters, we can technically recreate Caucasus from the belt and such, but I don't know what I'm doing. We should do it the other way first. Obviously, press this like so, slide it off, slide this out, and then just put the clock pad back in like so.
And then take this out, and I forgot to mention this. So obviously, to change back into Hyper Kabuto, you just simply hold it back down. Makes sense. Go over my final thoughts about this toy, to which it's really solid. This is a really solid release overall. Again, it's not, this and the Axel, Fi's Axel watch, I think is what it's called, are kind of different from, like, you know, what they did with the belts. To which, these two devices are basically in line with their CSM counterparts as opposed to their DX counterparts. The only thing carrying over from the DX version of the Hyper Zecter is the holder and such. But for the most part, this is a DX version of the CSM version. It's basically what Ultraman has been doing with their Ultra replicas and such. Or like Bandai China does with the Ultra replicas, of where they take the molds of the Ultra replicas but simplify them, but like still use carryover sounds from them, but like simplify them for like a retail market, to which I think is like perfect and such. And obviously for the Hyper Zecter, I don't mind that. No one minds that this doesn't carry over stuff from the DX one, because the CSM version, again, we'll probably get more from the version 2, or if they do a 1.5 for some reason. But I think, again, from like those leaked toy listings, or like premium toy listings, version 2 of this is inedible at this point. You know, I was kind of hoping that the Hyper Gatack or the Hyper Stag Beetle announcement, I was kind of curious if it was going to be another new announcement or if it was just going to be a straight up carryover from the CSM, and it's a carryover, which I don't mind, because again, those other two versions of the announcements, they're not wiped, they still exist. It's just that obviously the CSM version of the announcement is just going to be the one that's going to be commercialized, especially because it's been used in Gamba Rising, so I can't really be too particularly upset at that. And again, it's just really fun to play with overall. Just like, I kind of wish we had Final Form items like this again. I get why they stick all of them to the actual belts, but I think it would just be cool to have like, to go back into having like an independent item that actually does act as the final form, because again, I think the Hyper Zecter is one of the most interesting final form items we've gotten, especially at this point, because the majority of them have been weapons. I guess, like, I mean, Blade King form, well, the Blade King form still utilized the Rouse Absorber, but like, so that's technically different, but the Rouse Absorber has already been an established piece within Blade for the Jack forms. But like, again, to have something like the Hyper Zecter or a Task Slot, I think stuff like that, again, would be really cool and such. But I know we're not going to get it again, which is unfortunate. So I really do enjoy having this thing. And again, just to have Hyper Gatack in like a DX fashion, or with the DX stuff, is really cool overall. I got this off of Tokollectibles. I think this sold for $50, which I don't think is worth it. But I get it. You have to pay for like shipping fees and such. But I think the unfortunate thing is that I don't think they're selling this anymore. Same with the Fi's Axel. So it's gonna be difficult to try to track down a reliable place to get them, unless you want to bargain with AliExpress, because I see AliExpress constantly sell the Fies drivers on there for basically the retail price. So if you want to bargain with that and get your box bashed in, sure. Like, I mean, it's going to be a lot worse shape than Toe Collectibles. Toe Collectibles, I at least had a corner crushed, but like, I don't know if it's worth bargaining for. You can try Mercari Japan, but I don't know how likely that is. Kind of unfortunate, and I feel bad for saying that. But yeah, now to do this review, I really don't know what I'm trying to say anymore.